Hello, this is the fifth thoughts video. I have 8 thoughts here I'd like to discuss. Again, we'll do it as quickly and efficiently as I can. The first thing is more so just generally about these thought videos and how they're kind of a stream of consciousness, like a record of my stream of consciousness. And whether that's more for you, for me, I'm not really too sure yet. But just if it is helpful, just getting expressing these thoughts to look back on. And one thing that I think is important to discuss is that it's important for your for idea evolution. So oftentimes people do not like to be wrong because this, for some reason, seems like a negative thing. But actually, I think it's important for us to understand that everybody is to some degree wrong. Every idea, technology, system, process, everything is to some degree wrong. And the optimization should be to be less wrong over time. And this requires this evolutionary process. And it's really important within our minds to kind of accept this. And this, of course, means that we will be wrong as we can and change our opinion. And this is a healthy and good thing for progress. So in that frame, I'd like to discuss 2 things that I have evolved on over the last the course since I started doing these videos. So the first thing is about, I think in a previous video or a couple of videos, I was talking about solar energy as kind of this obvious winner in this future zero marginal cost, sustainable and resilient system. But I think that was the wrong message. That was a wrong mind framework to take with this, because what really needs to happen is we need to have a very clear analysis on metrics that we're trying to, like guiding metrics that we're trying to work toward. But it's kind of lazy to just say that one thing will work better than the other. So I think what I will change my viewpoint on this energy side, or on all these things. Everything, especially within the pillars of civilization, like I've been talking about, is I think what's really important here is that we do a thorough analysis on all the pillars of civilization, and then see what comes out the bottom of these things. And of course, everything you do is not black and white. Sometimes there's decisions that have to be made that are not just a clear, obvious winner. And this, of course, bifurcates the decision tree. And this will happen many times on the way through the decision tree. But it has to be clear as to what those metrics were and the decisions that were made at each bifurcation, such that if other cultures or other organizational structures, or there's other people want to discuss these things, it's clear why these decisions were made. And again, if one of those decisions was wrong or multiple were wrong, then we can go back in, change the metric or change the decision at that point in the branching process, and then pursue pursue a new branch. So this, I think, is just such a missing component today in our debates about what is important and the right questions to ask. And this kind of is important too. Like trying to figure out the right questions to ask is underappreciated. We're taught in school to just oblige and to the questions that are asked. And this is just really ingrained into our minds from a very young age, because you can't question your professors or your teachers. Otherwise you'll get your answers on your test wrong. But I think it is an important thing to do as we think about organizational structures of our future, and just generally speaking, when we're trying to make decisions about what is important to work on. Figuring out the right question to ask is arguably sometimes the hardest, like harder than knowing what the answer is, or harder than finding out what the answer is. So just doing this analysis on each of these pillars of civilization through energy and communication and movement and shelter and all these things, I think it's important to really do a thorough, transparent analysis. And this should be accessible for all levels of understanding. So if you can kind of look at the pillars of civilization and just see a very easy, quick thing for people for everybody to understand. But then if you want to keep on going down the decision tree and all of the equations and all of the assumptions and everything that was used to get to these solutions, it should be very clear. And then others that want to copy this, but then change one of those, the weight of each of the metrics along the branches along this tree, then they should be free to do so. But this allows the conversation to be more than just about this qualitative debate. It can be quantitative. These are the assumptions that were made, and here's the math to go along with it. And it's clear then why one would win out over the other. But I think, yeah, you want to set the high level optimizations, which I would say in Culture Earth anyways would be, you want sustainable, resilient, and zero marginal cost pillars of civilization. That is the goal. So how can you get there most efficiently? So and then you base all of your other metrics on your way through the decision matrices on these things to best achieve those goals in the most efficient and sustainable, resilient way. The second thing that is more of a omission, actually, that I just have been thinking quite a bit more about more recently, in terms of the actual pillars of civilization. I think I omitted a serious one here, which I would like to amend. So, of course, we have food and water, we have energy, we have shelter, movement, and communication. But there's one that's just glaringly obviously missing here, and this is manufacturing. And manufacturing is fundamental to civilization here, and I think it's underappreciated just how important it really is. Manufacturing is typically just seen as this kind of this replication process, and the hard part is figuring out the right product to make, and then doing the initial design, and then this manufacturing is just this replicator magic process where this happens. And this is really, I think, just a flawed thing, because if you think about every company right now that is manufacturing any their product, it's like manufacturing in this sense is just it's a subcomponent of what that company is doing. But really, in this new organizational structure where it's fully transparent about all the products and all the technologies that are being built, then manufacturing can actually be its own product in and of itself. And so you'd have incentive streams to create these manufacturing processes and systems to try to get this accomplished in the most efficient way and the most sustainable and resilient way for zero marginal cost. And this is a very difficult problem to solve, but you want to think of this as a product itself, the actual manufacturing process. And within that, you really do want to figure out the obvious thing here to get to this zero marginal cost, sustainable, resilient thing. Manufacturing does need to go as far in the direction of the closed loop on the atoms as possible. So from the original inception of these technologies and process and products, think about the recycling at the end of this process so that it's not a linear one-way street for the atoms. At the end of the useful life, instead of going into the ocean or a landfill or an incinerator, it comes back into the beginning of the manufacturing process for recycling and reuse. And then you get to some sort of finite amount of atoms that are being used in your global economy, in your global organizational structure. And that is of course very, very difficult, obviously, but that is where the incentive structure should be where we want to go toward. So this manufacturing thing is just very fundamental as a pillar of our civilization. And I think there's a lot of innovation that can happen here to achieve these things. And so when you're thinking about the various, if you have some sort of technology that uses a bunch of different types of atoms, obviously, then okay, what atoms are being used? Can we replace any of those atoms for more sustainable or accessible or resilient or sustainable atoms of some kind? And just do everything we can to be kind of transparently working towards the optimizations that again are resilient and sustainable and zero marginal cost. So this is the manufacturing thing is quite significant and important as we think about the organizational structures of our future. It is a very serious pillar of the organizational structure. So the next is kind of talking about this a little bit. This is about, I was talking to you about indoor 3D vertical farms, and I just have been thinking a little bit more about this. So I discussed how the output of 3D vertical farms actually increases linearly with the number of levels of the farm, because typically we have our 2D square, and then that has to rise up one layer at a time, and each layer is an additional increases linearly with the order of magnitude of output. But you also increase the utilization of that plot of land because you're in this environment that does not have any seasons. So when you're on the equator, you get the rainy and dry season, and when you're further away from the equator in both directions, you get these seasons. And usually you have a growing season and then a non-growing season. But when you're indoors and you have unlimited renewable energy for any kind of environment you want, and you can set any ppm concentration of carbon dioxide and any moisture content and all these kinds of things, then you can have multiple growing seasons every year, just continuous growing seasons. And so this is another huge improvement in the efficiency of farming in general, of food generation. So this is fundamental for getting towards zero marginal cost, resilient and sustainable on the food thing. But when you think a little bit more about the actual technology to do this, I'll just quickly dive into this a little bit. It's kind of just to continue to provide a thought timeline here on the evolution of these ideas. I think what you would want to do is, of course you have this cube then, which is this 3D indoor vertical farm, and that has many layers, many levels. But what you'd actually really want to do is you don't want any biological productivity in this thing, because that adds inefficiency. So from the get-go, design this thing so that it's just built for technological productivity. So like essential electric motors and machines and the electric digital brain. So then in that case, you don't actually need the levels on this thing to be full story height. It can just be whatever the height of the food that you're growing is. So that way you can, and again, in saying maybe in a typical story, you might be able to get three layers in. And again, it can be argued that, well, then you can't, humans can get in there to access it, but that's just set the direction that you want to go. Like, you don't make these sacrifices for the off chance that you have to, that then you can't do any maintenance on this because humans can't access it. Then you're just causing inefficiency needlessly from the beginning. But if you put the incentive structure in to get this, to solve it, you might as well just solve the hard problem here to maximize your efficiency. So in this case, when you'd have these much smaller levels, depending on your every level can be different too, depending on whatever you're growing this, and they can have different moisture contents and different sun concent or light concentrations and different ppms of CO2, and everyone can just be kind of unique. Then it's all about increasing the volumetric utilization, the volumetric efficiency of this cube, of this organic growing cube. And so when you think about some of the current indoor 3D farms, just think about the amount of volumetric efficiency that they have. And typically they have aisles between their rows of produce, and just maybe a lot of room on the top of these of these farms, and just very low volumetric utilization. So you want to just really maximize the amount of organic material that's generated for every cubic meter of interior volume. And that this again will help you on the race to zero marginal cost, sustainable and resilient food generation. And then just diving a little bit more deeper into the technology. At first, I thought that you could do some sort of matrix grid, like 2D matrix grid, with a robotic arm kind of following this grid, and then between the grid, then you'd have the lights and the ability to spread water and carbon dioxide and these such of things. But I think actually the next evolutionary iteration on mental iteration on top of that would be, you actually kind of create this what is actually like an inkjet printer style of solution for this, so that you have this crossbar that goes across the entire width of the farm on each level. And just like that works in the printer, this can actually go in a one dimension, which it doesn't in the printer. In the printer, it's fixed. But imagine if your main crossbar can actually go in one dimension, so up and down, say the length of this thing. Then on that crossbar, just like you have your ink, your printer head on this main bar, then that can go in the other dimension across the width of the 2D space, the 2D plane. And then you can access with your robotic arm, you can access any point in 2D space. So then that arm, which you have different end effectors on, such as for seeding and for farm maintenance and for harvesting and all these kinds of things, then you can really use that arm in any location. I think this simplifies it the design quite a bit. Yeah, I think this simplifies the design quite a bit, and so that would be another mental iteration on this. And this, again, we'd build and we'd evaluate and we try to apply these brain earth processes to get better ideas continuously on this process. And that end effector, like I said, it can have any. You want to minimize the amount of farming arms or whatever that you need. So what you could do, instead of planting it all at once and then having your arm very busy for a short amount of time and then waiting for the growing process or whatever it is to happen, you actually do it even on every level. You do it staged, so that that arm is just continuously moving. And this way, instead of having multiple arms that are required to do a large area all at once, you can have a single dynamic arm to do the whole area and be continuously working. Increase the utilization of that robotic farming arm. And so it would just this is attached to the crossbar arm, and it can move laterally, and then on that crossbar arm, and the crossbar arm itself then can move the perpendicular direction. And then on the bottom of that arm, then you'd have the end effector can be anything you need for farming. So I think I think that does reduce complexity and increases utilization of your atoms and your electrons. Yeah. Yeah. Lots more obviously to be done there, but I think a couple of those things are important to think about as we design that. Just next, I just really quickly, point number 4 here is just about, again, I talked about this a little bit, but it's very important to figure out the right question to ask, because right now, like I've said in previous videos, we're often handed these two negative trade-off options, which is usually just take a few anecdotal examples that are very significant and serious in our current organizational structures, like say for fertilizer for food and for farmers. So of course the current ammonia and nitrogen situation in fertilizer, it's a Haber Bosch process. You get this. It is detrimental to the environment in many ways, and you have runoff into fresh water sources and the oceans, and and have implications for organic life in those things. But then of course the other option then in the current two negative trade-off things is just to cancel that and not have as much food, and then people will starve. So you get into this situation where it's like you're polluting or you're starving, not the two options that you want to have. And then in saying like housing, for example, then it's like, because of our existing organizational structures and everything, and the incentive structures and middlemen and stuff, then you have this very extremely expensive option for housing, and very, very unsustainable as well in terms of the sustainability of the products that are used within that shelter. And then the other option is just to not build anything. So then you have either you're building, but you're massively indebted for your whole life and you're polluting a lot, or you don't have a home. Again, these are just two terrible options. And the fight is always between those two. Like, it's just these two negative trade-off things. And this is just on and on and on across all of our, across many of our decisions that are currently debated. But you must innovate. This is the only solution to get through these things. You can have fertilizer so that you can have food and not pollute. But you need to innovate, and you need to set the right incentive structures to get to innovate in that space. On shelter, you can have homes, and you can have and not be indebted to your home your entire life, and be massively polluting when you're creating your home or building your home. But you need to innovate. This is everything that we have right now in our entire organizational structure. All this technology was due to innovation. But yeah, if we forget that this is the innovation is like this innovation and engineering is the reasons that we have all these things, and we get distracted by, and start asking the wrong questions. Then we end up in in situations where it's just the trade-off between two negatives. And I can't emphasize that enough. Again, within the fiscally, it's going, the two negative trade-offs are spending irresponsibly, going seriously into debt, but then having a little bit of social programs and propping up the median individual within that whole situation. And then the other side is writing your balance sheet and then canceling all your programs, and the median individual within the organizational structure suffers. But again, you can have both. You can have a healthy balance sheet, which you kind of have inherently through this culture structure anyways, because there's no such thing that you don't spend future or previous tokens. It's just a token pulse that's impossible. There's no debt, there's no anything. It's just that token pulse is either valuable or not valuable. It's valuable if people bring their time, ideas, and resources to it, and the culture leadership is efficient in their token allocation, and they're setting value vectors that people believe in, and they're actually executing along those value vectors. That will gain value, token value, and then that token value will then be able to incentivize more people to join and contribute along the value vectors. But in the current organizational structure, if you have just massively into debt or kill the social programs, then you need to innovate. You need to innovate to solve. You can have the medium individual within your organizational structure have a great foundation to grow from, and you can have this fiscally sustainable situation. Must innovate. Okay, point number 5. This is kind of keeping on going on this theme. It's just, again, when you think about organizational structures that we currently have, and in this capitalist situation, in our current form, along the resource growth value vector that optimizes for output quantity, then of course you get these increase as we move into this technological productivity world. Then you do get these increasing spires of power and wealth in corporation structures. And then that, of course, has to get because we're losing jobs, and for the medium individual, and most people there's less and less jobs for people. Then you have to do this universal basic income situation, which is essentially just taxing these big corporations. That goes through the government, and the government redistributes this. And of course, the government's not a great capital allocator because there's no incentive structure for that. So this whole thing is becomes very inefficient. And but again, in that situation, when you're just think of it as sprinkling money on your population, but you're watering this money on your population, but it doesn't matter if the underlying roots of everything again is failing. So the infrastructure is failing, and the houses are too expensive, and the food is too expensive, and the energy is too expensive and unsustainable. So you just the whole thing is, you just flip this situation. What you really want, just like with the crop, is instead of just dousing water on the crop, which eventually will suffocate it, you go from the bottom up, and you have very healthy soils, and you have this and sunlight and a proper amount of water, but from the bottom up, these roots that are growing from the bottom up, not from the top down. And so that's why I keep coming back to the pillars of civilization, because then if you can provide shelter and energy and movement and communication and manufacturing and all these things, that then you can, for zero marginal cost, sustainable and resilient, then people are free. That's the baseline. And then we can move on to it's not, again, this competition in this whole thing to get there. And then it's not saying that there's no everything is zero marginal cost, but just at least the pillars of civilization. Then people can charge tokens or for other endeavors or arts or music or whatever they want to do in there. And some people can, this way some people are doing better than others, and you have this competition. But I think the progress of a civilization would be much faster, and just the health of our entire organizational structure would just be far superior. Because just a very easy way to think about this is, what is the percentage of time and effort of the sum of the humans upon Earth spent to provide the pillars of civilization for them and their family? Significant. Maybe in the more quote unquote developed world, a lot of maybe some people, that's a small portion of their resources that come in to pay for the pillar of civilization, but I suspect for the vast majority of humans on planet Earth, almost all of their time is spent either like working to earn money for food and shelter and movement and manufacture things. And so if you can then free all that time up for this, which we can do, at least in the pillars of civilization side, we can get to this place where it's zero marginal cost, sustainable and renewable, and it's sustainable and resilient. Then you have all that human capacity and time and effort to pursue the next level of things that humanity wants to do. So this is why I think this is just like this whole organizational structure is just a far more healthy outcome for humanity. The next thing, point number 6. So I've talked a bit about Brain Earth. This, you can think of this, let's give an example. So if you're trying to solve a technological problem of some kind, and you have, just like you have now, you have the internet of people all working on this, and you no longer have this discrete team that has to be in the same geographic location and usually was filtered out because of some sort of educational filters that they have to be university educated or whatever, or they have to be any. There's a whole number of filters that limit the amount of people that would possibly, and just size of the team in physical space that you can have. So the ideas to iterate on your solution are far reduced. So you really want to open it up so that anybody with an internet connection can provide these ideas and technologies and solutions and systems and processes to solve these problems, to get to like along these sustainable, resilient, and zero marginal cost optimizations. So this is why you really do need to have this, like, open this up to this whole world with an internet connection. And just quickly tangent on the rate of progress. So rate of progress in human civilization is a linear function that is essentially the frequency of iterations, the iteration frequency multiplied by the significance of each iteration, like the useful significance of each iteration. So of course your iteration frequency can be increased by having 24/7 production lines and development streams. So you just constantly, the iterations is happening as quickly as possible, continuously. And then on the other side of this, then you have the significance of each iteration. And so right now within a discrete team, this is what we have right now. And but I think you can get far, far greater by opening this up to anybody on planet Earth with a internet connection. And so if you just think about this as a whirlpool, so at the top, say if you're trying to optimize something, at the top you'll have this like a whole pile, like whether it's 100, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, 100 million, whatever, like a very high amount of ideas, say, coming in. But then how do you, because of course at the bottom of this, like when the people that are actually taking action on these ideas, it's very difficult to then sort through all these ideas. And I mean, it's currently impossible. It's just too much noise. And how do you filter the signal from the noise? So there's some people or some organizations kind of thing that are happening right now in various reward projects that are going on, and to try to get the signal at the bottom of this with one lump sum for the winner. But the problem with that is that it's very difficult to figure out what that winner is all the way at the bottom. So what you need to do is you need help guiding the good ideas down the funnel, down this cyclone. So to do this, you actually need to incentivize the voting of these ideas and the filtering these ideas through everybody in this structure. And so just it's a very quick, like very easy way to think about this is at the top of the whirlpool where all the ideas are, you have people that you can vote on these things. Whether, like, for again, in the beginning, let's just say it's binary, it's good or bad or whatever, useful or not useful. Then if there's enough people that are saying useful and it's working its way down the whirlpool and it gets to the bottom and that's decided by the leadership of the culture that it is useful, then that signal boosts all the way back up through everybody that voted that was going to be useful, and the weighted significance of their vote then increases by a little bit, and they're also rewarded for that. So and of course the original idea gets rewarded the most, but the filtering of that idea also gets rewarded. So because that's as important, or even maybe more important, to get the right idea down to the bottom of the funnel, the idea funnel, as the idea itself. So of course, everyone will get small fractions of that all the way down. And what you end up having is over time, the people that are continually aligned with the values you distribute the filtering process from just a small team to everybody, and everybody's incentivized to do this. And if you continually are on this, or you continue aligned with the leadership of the organizational structure, and you're continually getting these things right, then you'll be rewarded. Like your incentive loop will be to continue trying to do your best to vote accurately as possible, as well as your mind can think of. And so then people that are continually aligned, then their vote will have a greater significance than those that are not, because they will obviously be far more aligned than the people that are continually voting the opposite direction. So that, you say, it goes to the bottom of the funnel and the leadership votes that it wasn't useful, but you voted it was useful, then there's a negative implication to the vote significance. And what's even cooler here, to take it to the next step, is you don't want one metric to be voted on. It should be a multitude of votes that can be, so of optimizations that can be looked at, metrics that can be looked at. So if you think about like not just useful or not useful, that's like one vote, but you can do like what is like just like a crazy idea that might work that I've never thought of before, or something like that, like crazy idea that has high potential if possible, or something like that. And then maybe one that's just like tried and true metric, and some just try various metrics here. Like you don't want one funnel to come down. You want like maybe 10 funnels or something like this, or 5 funnels, something more than one. And so that the leadership at the bottom then can be like, okay, here are a greater diverse amount of ideas that, for different optimizations. And maybe one of those might work. And not just like the most logical. Sometimes the illogical ideas are the ones you'd like to pursue, the ones that are non-consensus in ways. So yeah, something like this I think would be a good place to start in terms of this brain earth and filtering these ideas. But you do need so you need this funnel, the idea funnel, and you need to be incentivizing the people to try to that are aligned with the leadership of the culture in terms of their incentive structure. And of course, if the people in this culture or this brain earth feel like the leadership is not making the right calls, and they, again, take everything, copy everything, and fork it and do it on your own, and create your own, or go and pursue and join another culture. So I think this is a place to start, for the brain earth architecture. The last thing here I'm going to talk about is just this human colossus, and this is just the never-ending pursuit of progress for human civilization. And one could probably argue that this thing doesn't stop. There's something called the multipolar trap, where if one organization or one person or one body of some kind is working on, is doing something that to the advantage of that person, then every other organization or body or person or whatever will have to do that as well. And so you get in this thing. This is what that kind of all means, is that there's no stopping. We're on this like metaphorical freighter ship that is just going through the ocean. And so, but you don't want to, I think arguably if it stops or if it's anchored in some way, it probably sinks, because that's probably the only way that stops, if it's going down. And so then what you need is to be doing everything possible to help steer it in the right direction. And really what you want the sum of the will of the humans of planet Earth to be steering this boat. And this is what cultures really do, because if the progress vectors will inherently be within the cultures that the most amount of people believe in, the ones that are making the most amount of progress, because people will support them with their time, ideas, and resources to make progress along those value vectors. And so this is very important, and to have transparency, and then to have the substrate such that if you no longer believe in that culture and those value vectors or the decisions that are being made, then you can remove your time, ideas, and resources from that culture and go to other cultures, or fork your own culture off. And then what you end up here is like the net sum of the vectors of your value vectors are headed in the direction of the sum of the will of the humans of planet Earth. And so arguably in our current organizational structure, you have a very few amount of people that are deeply embedded within the organizational structures that are not highly visible that are making a lot of the calls here that are not always in the best interest of the humans of planet Earth, of the net sum of the will of the humans of planet Earth. So this is what I think culture is really, again, this could be one of the most significant things here, is that not only can you make progress far faster, but it's actually, it's the net sum of the vectors of the value vectors for the humans of planet Earth. That's the resultant vector is kind of the direction that the boat is going. I'll cut it there for now.